mighty cows discovered that big beer flavour is a secret. Vic Secret. It's big on pine. It's big on pine apple. Discover Vic Secret from HPA.
Hey guys, it's Craig from The Crafty Pint here, back with another edition of our Aussie Hops series presented by HPA. Through this series, we've been talking to brewers both in Australia and around the world about some of their favourite Australian hops. Today, I'm joined by Zach from Cellar West Brewery in Colorado and Chris from HPA, and we're talking all things Vic Secret. Zach, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into it.
Excellent. And Chris, thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you so much.
Now, Chris, I might start with you. If you can let's talk Vic Secret. Let's break it down. Give me the kind of background of this hop. What sort of flavor profile are you looking for and more?
Yeah, sure. Vic Secret was bred in 2000, but commercialized in 2013, so 12 years ago now. And its pedigree is pretty complex. It's got Aussie, European, and North American, heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very complex genetics in it. It's from a brewer and drinker perspective, it's most I guess the easy sort of elevator pitch for it is kind of like upside down Centennial in a way. So Centennial is a classic US aroma hop. It's driven primarily by pine with some fruit underneath it. And Centennial, Vic Secret is the opposite. So it's got sweet fruit on top, mostly like pineapple and tropical, with pine underneath that. So it's kind of like take Centennial, turn it on its head, and then make it much, much bigger. Centennial's got a little over 1% oil, and Vic Secret's around 2.5. So it's a monster, and a little bit goes a very long way.
Yeah, nice. And Zach, for our listeners in Australia, first of all, just tell me whereabouts you are, which brewery you work with, and what's the kind of background there.
Yeah, so I'm the owner and brewer at Cellar West Brewery, and we're a small brewery outside of Boulder, Colorado. So we're
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, half an hour from Denver and 15 minutes from Boulder, if people are familiar with that area. But we've been open. We just had our 8-year anniversary. But I've been in the industry professionally for probably closer to, man, I'm creeping up on 20 years. I'm probably 16 years, something like that. So we at Cellar West, we do a little bit of everything. We kind of started out doing a lot more Belgian and farmhouse style beers than anything, but we've since expanded that. We do everything from lagers these days to West Coast IPAs. We don't really do a lot of hazy IPAs, but a lot of like clean hoppy beer. But we still do a lot of saisons and Brettanomyces-fermented beers and stuff like that. But even with that, we still like to play around with hops a lot. So,
Chris, have you been to Cellar West? Like, give us a sense of the vibe.
Yeah, well, yeah. Back in the day, I used to work for the Brewers Association, and the home office is in Boulder, and there are an awful lot of breweries in the Boulder, Colorado area. And uh, one of my fellow staffers finally clued me into Cellar West one time and said, "Man, you got to check this brewery out." We went over, and it was love at first pint. I've never had a bad beer there, and absolutely love the Belgian style, especially. Your saisons. I've had a grisette or two there. Really, 2.5%, really delicate beers that are just off the hook, fantastic crushable beers. And I do remember one of those. I think made with Vic. Anyway. After that first visit, I made a point of coming back many, many times after that, and very much admire the brewery. More recently, Zach very, very generously shared a saison recipe for our new recipe book that came out last year, and including some very highly detailed usage tips about how much to add and when to add hops and all that. We're very thankful for that. So anyway, thanks a million for that, Zach.
Yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, nice. We'll have to make sure we visit next time we're in Colorado for sure. Now, Zach, in terms of Vic Secret and I guess Aussie hops in particular, what's the appeal for you? Where did you sort of first come across these particular hops?
Yeah, I mean the first hop that or Australian hop that I used, commercially would have been Galaxy.
Hmm.
And looking back, that probably would have been sometime. Maybe Chris can touch on that a little bit with Galaxy's timeline, but I think it was probably relatively widely commercially available in the U.S. It would have been probably 2010 or 11 that I kind of came across it and started playing with it in full size production beers. And really just obviously Galaxy, totally different story than Vic Secret. They obviously have some similarities, but just really unique flavor and aroma profile compared to a lot of what we had in the US at the time.
Hmm.
Obviously the palette that we get to work with hop wise has expanded exponentially in the last 15 years, but um, Galaxy really kind of opened my eyes to Australian hops and just some of the unique, specifically fruit characteristics we were getting out of that Galaxy at the time. Um, and so yeah, we started to play with. I was at a brewery in Boulder at the time, and we were doing some beers with Galaxy. Galaxy started to get a little harder to come across and get your hands on around 2012, 2013. So we started playing around with Topaz, which was also a really nice hop. I think for us, we had to kind of learn how to use Topaz as opposed to Galaxy because I think to us, the hop brokers we were working with at the time were pitching Topaz to us as sort of like a substitute for Galaxy, which also really great hop Topaz is, but we found that it definitely carried some differences than Galaxy. So but yeah, Topaz we played around with, and then yeah, over the last few years, man, I think I've probably I've got the HPA list of all the Australian grown varietals in front of me. I think I've pretty much Ella. I'm not sure if I played with, but I think we've definitely used everything, including Eclipse, which is the newer one. And
Mm.
but yeah, Vic Secret. That was a hop that I came across. Around that same time, it probably would have been more like 2014. A there's a brewery called Avery Brewing, which I'm sure some people in Australia and definitely the U.S. know. They're still around, pretty large brewery, but at the time they rolled out this new I want to say it was a double IPA. It was called Raja, and big unique pineapple profile to it. And
Mm.
yeah, just really enjoyed that beer. And I had some friends who were brewers over there at the time and just started to pick their brain about what they were using hop wise in that beer. And the main hop, as far as I understood, was Vic Secret, and I'd never used it. I think I'd maybe heard about it a little bit, and I bugged the folks at Avery to send a bag or two my way and start playing with it and really fell in love with it. Again, carries some similar things to other Australian hops I had used, including Galaxy, and but also very distinct in its own right.
Yeah, nice. And I guess from that evolution, like which beers are you now using Vic Secret in, like of your portfolio?
Yeah, we don't have. I wouldn't say we have any flagship beers per se. We've got three or four beers that we brew pretty frequently, but we don't have one or two beers that are around all the time. They kind of rotate and come and go, and that's kind of how we treat a lot of the beers that we use Vic Secret in. So, last year we did like an American Pale Ale. Well, it's Australian Pale Ale essentially, but sort of in the mold of an American Pale Ale, and it was all Vic Secret on the hot side in the kettle, and then like 90% Vic Secret in the dry hop with a little bit of Galaxy mixed in there too. Um, which was a fun beer to do. But then we've also done a lot of Vic Secret beers that were more saison or Belgian style. So we've
Mm.
done clean Saccharomyces saisons that had Vic Secret either on the dry hop or in the whirlpool. We've done really hop forward Brettanomyces fermented beers, which have been really neat with Vic Secret too. Just kind of the way that the Brett kind of biotransforms some of the compounds in Vic Secret's pretty cool. So we've played with it quite a bit. We've used it. I don't know. There's probably 15 to 20 different beers I've brewed at Cellar West that have had Vic Secret in them in one way or another, whether it was 100% Vic Secret saison or a 90% Vic Secret Pale Ale, or a beer that just had a little bit of Vic Secret sprinkled in to kind of play with some other, Australian or New Zealand or American hops. So we've used it pretty, across the board. So
Mm. And certainly sounds like it's a really versatile hop that you can use across different styles. I guess would you how would you describe Vic Secret in terms of, I guess, its point of difference to other hops on the market? Is it sort of that versatility, or
I think it presents differently, certainly in different ways, depending on where you're using it, the yeast that you're using it in, all the way down to like, is it going to a beer that's going to finish bracingly dry versus a beer that's maybe going to be a little fuller and sweeter? It presents a little differently. But I
Mm,
think, to Chris's point, I think he hit the nail on the head with just the characteristics that we find being, more that like pineapple forward with some of that kind of like edgy pine note in the background. And
mm,
depending on what levers we've pulled in the brew house and in the cellar, you can kind of finesse certain things within Vic Secret to come out a little more right. So if you want a little bit more of that pine, we've found that going, in the hot side in the kettle a little earlier, right? So maybe in the last like 15 minutes of the boil, if you had some Vic Secret, it seems like some of those oils or essential aromatics that carry a little more of that fruit character might get boiled off, and you kind of carry through a little more of that like edgy pine note to it into the
mm,
flavor. Um, but in beers that we've done, big heavy dry hops exclusively with Vic Secret, we're definitely getting a lot more of that like juicy pineapple note coming through.
mm.
So it's a fun hop to play with, and every year, similar to most hops, that hop presents a little differently depending on the lot and the year that we're getting.
Mhm.
Um, I would say over the years, I've seen it go a little bit from being more. I mean, I remember like early lots of Vic Secret that we were getting in 2013, 2014 being like almost to the point where you had to be careful how you used it because it was so tropical and so like leaning
Mhm.
towards that almost like overripe tropical fruit kind of note, where if you're
Mm.
just like careless with it, it would just dominate a beer. Um, and I think the pine character I feel like has sort of come up a little bit in the last few years, and the fruit's kind of taken not a backseat, but definitely come down a little bit. So it's a little more balanced. I think it's a little more forgiving these days of a hop to work with. You
Mm.
can kind of apply it across the board. Where, yeah, early on it was a hop that if you didn't if you weren't careful about the way you're using it, it could easily dominate a beer. So
Yeah, awesome. I love those kind of little technical tips there. Anything else that you've learned, I guess, through your time working with Big Secret? Any other tips or tricks that you might be able to share?
yeah, I think in regards to dry hopping, we've found that when we do cooler dry hops, meaning like dry hopping the beer, 62 or under, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, I should say, or under, where we seem to pull out a little more of that fruit note. Where if we're going a little more of a warmer dry hop, 68, 69, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, or even for like a longer time period, we seem to pull out a little more of that pine character. Um, the other thing about Vic Secret that I've found that I think is true with a lot of Australian hops, is, as Chris said, it's an oil monster. And so that hasn't really changed over the years in my experience. And so that is something to take into consideration. And what I mean by that is, it can, I think the bitterness profile that I get out of Vic Secret can sort of lean pretty heavy into that kind of like bitey pine character. So I tend to like to go with something a little more neutral for bittering when I do a Vic Secret forward beer. Like a Hellertau Magnum or something like that, and then really load the Vic Secret into the late kettle and dry hop. And also with that, a lot of the beers that we do, and a lot of beers that I've had from other brewers, and I've sort of heard this across the board, that predominantly feature Australian hops, including Vic Secret, is because that oil load is so high percentage wise that they just you got to give them a little more time in the bright and maybe even in the final package. They
Mm.
just take an extra day or two to kind of come around. They stay green a little bit longer. Once they do kind of turn that corner after a couple days, they really are beautiful beers. But you just got to kind of treat beers that are, in my experience, predominantly feature Australian hops a little differently because that oil consideration.
Chris, is that something that I guess you could add any insight to as well around that difference, the oil content and so on, between Australian versus your classic US hops?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of cost of use, like Zach was saying, a little bit goes an awful long way, and they cast Vic especially casts a very long shadow, and so if you're used to 2 and 3 pounds per barrel, with a U.S. diploid hop at 1.5% oil or 1.2% oil, you could probably cut that back quite a bit and still get an enormous sensory outcome from Vic. With a lot lower usage rate, and we've heard that a lot from brewers around the world, especially in Australia.
I definitely think that high oil content too. It seems, in my experience, that you get a slightly, I don't want to use the word hazy, but that oil seems to want to hang around in suspension a little longer. If you're doing like a, I don't know, Simcoe dry hop versus like an all Galaxy or Vic Secret dry hop, for whatever reason, it must be related to the oil. Those beers tend to kind of want to remain a little more hazy. And I've actually heard from some of our friends who do a lot of hazy IPAs that beers that they've done that it seems that Southern Hemisphere, because I think it's New Zealand hops as well. They seem to want to stay hazy longer, and maybe it's something related to that oil content. So
The Antipodean effect, I think. Now, you mentioned sort of obviously pairing Vic Secret with other hops. Are there any particular pairings that you really like to play with, or you like the outcome?
yeah, I think I really enjoy doing classic American hops with Vic Secret. We've done some beers where it's like a lot of big high alpha Australian hops together, and to that point of them just being big oil
Mm.
monsters and really assertive. Those beers are great in their own right, but they kind of hit you over the head. If you're talking about a big dry hop like all Galaxy, Eclipse, Vic Secret beer versus something that's maybe like 50-50, Cascade and Vic Secret. Just something to kind of tamper down that big profile a little bit. So, if we do something like a pale ale that's got a lot of what's a hop I could use? So like Crystal is a good example. Kind of old school American hop, really nice hop, pretty subtle. The characteristics it has are really beautiful, really nice, like kind of light citrus lemony notes to it, a little bit of floral thing going on, but can be pretty understated in like a hop forward beer. So that would be something where I would mix in a hop like Vic Secret at about 25% just to kind of really pop up some of the profile on that. So yeah, I think mixing Vic Secret with beers that or with hops that do come off a little more understated
Mm.
works really well.
Yeah, nice. And Chris, I understand Vic Secret is also available in Spectrum, which is the liquid dry hopping product or range. Can you tell me a bit more about that, Chris? Like, how does that work, and what does that offer brewers as another uh, piece of toolkit?
Yeah, just briefly, Spectrum is it's an advanced product. It's a liquid format hop. It's all the good stuff from the hop and minus the vegetative matter. So same thing. A little bit goes a long way. Spectrum is intended to be used on the cold side, although some people do put it on the hot side, but it's really easy to flash off an awful lot of aroma very quickly. Um, so if you do that, you probably want to dip hop it, drop that whirlpool temp down to high 70s, maybe low 80s. But primarily on the cold side as a dry hop, and it really wants to be fully fermented. It does contain alpha acid, unisomerized alpha acid, and cohumulone, as well as all the aromatics. So fermenting is nice because you get all the biotransformation. You lose the alpha acid, in your yeast, just like you normally would, and at the same time, you don't lose any beer in the, when you're dumping hot matter off the bottom at the end of, once you've cold crashed the tank. So, you can, a lot of times you can yield, 4 or 5, as high as maybe 8% more beer off that tank. Anyway, really, really lovely products. They take a lot less space for storage. There's freight advantages, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, and the spectrum is fantastic. It's a neat way to get true to target aroma that you expect from the raw hop. I started brewing an awful long time ago, and we had access to all different oils, and boy, none of them really did the trick. But advanced products these days have come light years, and Spectrum's definitely one of those.
Is that something you've looked at, Zach, in terms of whether you'd like to use those sort of liquid hop varieties?
Sure. Yeah, we've never used the Vic Secret version of Spectrum. We've used a little bit of Spectrum in the cellar before. We've used some Incognito, which is a similar product, more kind of designed for the whirlpool. We've actually used Incognito. I don't know, Chris, are you guys doing Incognito for any Australian products?
Yeah, we've got a couple, and I guess the poorly kept secret is we're about to have Galaxy Incognito available. It's in development right now. We hope that it'll be out by Craft Brewers Conference.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we like using Incognito. What we'll do is we'll actually we'll put it into the fermenter that we're about to fill, and then we'll knock off half a barrel to a barrel of hot wort into that fermenter, just to kind of sterilize everything, get that Incognito into solution, and then we'll start chilling our wort and knocking out and filling that fermenter up. But that seems to be a really great way to keep all the the good stuff that you want to get out of Incognito into the fermenter. But yeah, Spectrum we've used a little bit. Have not used the Vic Secret Spectrum, but definitely interested in playing around with it. I love those products. So
yeah, nice. Well, guys, that pretty much wraps up our talk. But thank you so much for your time and for joining us, Zach Nichols from Cellar West and Chris Swersey from HPA. And we'll be back with another edition of our Aussie Hops series presented by HPA. In the meantime, for all the info you need on the very best Australian hops, head to www.hops.com.au. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers.
Auntie Carol's discovered that big beer flavour is a secret. Vic Secret. It's big on pine. It's big on pine apple. Discover Vic Secret from HPA.